Okay, everyone hear me all right? Great. Okay, so I'm with Celadyne. I'm the founder and CEO. Celadyne's a startup. We sell materials. So really simple there. I'm always told, when you start a presentation, first of all, make sure the technology works. And apparently it doesn't. Hello? Give me 1 second. Okay, never mind. So, we're going to talk a little bit about hydrogen demand and its uses in hydrogen mobility. Again, right? If you don't like the presentation, at least I can tell you it's 14 slides long. So you can follow towards the end. And you can look forward to the end. But hopefully you'll at least enjoy the presentation. Okay. So when I talk about hydrogen and its uses, right? Because we're so focused on its uses in mobility, I can tell you a little bit of a different story. So for folks here that come from California, this might be quite relatable. Did you know that if you come from Los Angeles or Southern California, you're exposed to a lot of pollution, and most of it comes from trucking? It's true. Now, to give you a sense of what that's like, have any one of you been stuck in a traffic jam in the back of an Uber on the way to the airport, and the guy didn't turn on the filter, right? And then suddenly you start smelling exhaust, and you take a deep breath, and you're like, oh my God, kill me now, right? So that's every day in Bakersfield in summer because of the emissions coming from heavy-duty trucking. So the drive to want to decarbonize trucking using hydrogen and hydrogen fuel cells is more than just a decarbonization argument. It's actually a public health argument. Now, what's the possible alternative, and what's the world you can achieve if you are successful? You get something like this. Again, one of the beauty of COVID, yes, was this is actually LA during COVID. It was beautiful. And because of how the streams work and how the air works in LA, it comes down from the mountains. And when there's no pollution, if you take a deep breath in downtown LA in 2020, it was incredible. You're like, I feel like I'm in the mountains. It's achievable if you can fix pollution. Now, how do you do that? Well, the good news is hydrogen is an incredible opportunity across the fuel markets, the device markets, and the materials market. There's only one fundamental problem. Everyone wants to make hydrogen, but who's going to use it? Where are you going to sell it? Right? We think that mobility is the first high-value market because if you look at mobility today, there's a confluence of three things that's enabling the market to be your first high-value market. You have Class 8 Level 4 autonomous trucks being developed by every single OEM. That means the trucks are not going to have drivers anymore. That turns it to a high utilization asset. Number two, Canada has already passed carbon taxes, which means if you don't decarbonize it, you're paying $1 billion in carbon taxes a year. And finally, nearshoring and domestic production, because of all the countries preferencing that, means that logistical nets are going to be denser, which actually means more trucking, not less trucking. So, if you want to find an expanding market where you can sell to, and also mobility tends to use fuel, which is a higher price point than everything else, like heat, it's a good market to sell to. Here's how we enable that. You want to make fuel cell trucks durable and long-lasting. Number two, with that, you want to scale so that you can make hydrogen fuels cheaper. After that, scale, 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 scale. How can we help on the side? Now, we're a very small player. Like I said, we do materials. But one of the things that we improve on is the proton exchange membrane that goes into these devices. So on the hydrogen trucking side of things, we basically quintuple durability so that you can have a fuel cell that is 5 times more durable so that you can compete with the diesel engine. On the electrolysis side, we help you have really, really thin membranes so that you can get benefits in efficiency. Why efficiency? Because for distributed hydrogen production, for instance, a lot of your cost is going to come from electricity for the production of hydrogen. And we believe when electricity prices are really high, you can drop costs a lot more if you focus on efficiency. Some people like to think of it as a capex reduction because our technology also lets you get higher current density. That's fine. The math is the same. It just depends on where in the polarization curve you want to operate in. So, the economics of fuel cell trucks today. You might wonder, how come I don't see a bunch of fuel cell trucks operating already if this is such a good idea, right? It's because it's not profitable. The fuel cell truck, everyone knows, will only survive about 5 years before it breaks down, and you have to replace the whole fuel cell. One of the earlier speakers, I think from Germany, said, right, the problem with fuel cells and electrolyzers is that it's a multi-cell system. So if one membrane breaks and has a pinhole, the whole system is screwed, and you have to replace the whole thing. That's the problem. So now you have to replace the whole thing, and the whole thing's really expensive. It's about 1/3 of the cost of the whole thing. So what we do is make the lifetime at least comparable to the diesel engine. That makes it profitable for you to sell trucks. Now, on top of that, it makes it profitable to sell trucks today. Whereas previously, the only way to make it profitable would be to scale and scale and scale and get it to a large volume of trucks before you can sell it for a profit. What about green hydrogen production? So I'm showing you a very big loss right now because I'm showing you everything up to a price of $6 per kilogram, which is the price of diesel in California. But I add in the cost of permitting and pump costs and so forth. Right? And that's why you lose so much money. A lot of people talk about hydrogen production costs and CapEx, OpEx, but you don't want to talk about the permitting and the pump costs. But that's what the consumer sees. So because of that, it doesn't make sense. It might make sense for you to sell blue hydrogen. So what we do is you can knock that price down to get efficiency because the price of electricity is really high in California. Now, it doesn't get you quite to parity at $6, but it does give you within shooting range. So for folks here that are in hydrogen, one of my ask for you is, if anyone here knows how to get the permitting and pump costs down to $5 per kilogram, I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Just because that's something I've been thinking a lot for a long time now, which is the transportation cost of hydrogen and the dispensing cost of hydrogen. So this is actual material that you can get from us today. Right? We have actually shipped these materials to OEMs already, multiple of them. I think the count is about 9 companies. We're actually working with the membrane manufacturers that you guys all know and love too. So there's a small chance you guys might already have some of our materials in your labs, you just don't know it. And we can sell rolls of this material by the end of the year. So what do we solve on a scientific standpoint, since this is a technical talk? Well, I like to think of it as solve pinholes. Because at the end of the day, right, what kills an electrolyzer? What kills a fuel cell? Well, your membrane develops a pinhole. More specifically, it develops a pinhole because the membrane starts thinning and thinning and thinning because you start creating peroxides whenever the hydrogen crosses over the membrane. We shut that down. So now you have no more hydrogen crossover. You have no more peroxide formation, which means everything that you are worried about for durability, ionomer degradation, membrane thinning, all the subsequent etching coming from your degradatory products, etching your corrosion and whatever, goes away. On top of that, because we're able to achieve this using thinner membranes, you get efficiency as an outcome as well. Here's how we do it. So this is a public presentation, so I didn't show you the state-of-the-art data. Instead, what I did show you is just data that you can understand. So 211 data that everyone knows is published, it's a known membrane, it's not the state-of-the-art, but we do the approach of blocking hydrogen a little bit different because we block hydrogen using a coating. It's a hydrocarbon material. It will reduce your PFAS materials by about 80%, but it does really well at blocking hydrogen while remaining conductive. Add a 1.5 micron coating to your membrane, and you get AST hours of about 5x. So the Nafion in the lab will survive about 80 hours. With this coating, it will survive about 450 hours. And that's DOE's accelerated stress test. A lot of people ask me, but if you do a bilayer material, wouldn't that thing degrade? Or wouldn't that thing delaminate? Well, this thing has chemical mechanical durability built into it. So if it didn't delaminate from the swelling, deswelling cycles that we put it through. So other things, how did we come about doing this? Well, we developed this thing almost entirely with grant funding. So everything is expert vetted. DOE, ARPA-E, DOD contracts, and NSF. After that, we actually raised venture funding from Shell Ventures, Dynamo, Manif, and Eastern Pacific Shipping to basically scale the product. And we've actually sent these materials to the major OEMs, to the Department of Defense, and we have an electrolysis demonstration project with a Northeast partner, just to show its viability in electrolyzers. So this is our experts that developed it. Most of us come from the Argonne National Lab lineage. That's where the company was formed and commercialized. We're based out of Chicago. I came from Berkeley, hence the connection to California and about pollution and all that, right? Then I went to Texas, which is still, for anyone who's been to Texas, still a lot of pollution and a lot of stuff in the summer, not great. And then I went to Chicago, it's a little bit better. Toru, my senior electrochemist, came straight out of Argonne, amazing guy from Stanford. Corey came from the semiconductor industry, and Delia is my co-founder from UT Austin, second startup in her portfolio. So our advisors came from Argonne too, over 50 years of fuel cell experience. Benny is an amazing membrane chemist out of UT, and my commercialization, we have the former CTO of DuPont advising us. He loves our strategy because he's like, you know, Nafion was in my purview, and I've tried to kill it for the last 50 years and failed because it's such an amazing product. Your stuff doesn't actually kill Nafion, it actually makes Nafion better. It takes care of Nafion's Achilles heel, right, in a very scalable fashion. Ron has 3 startups under his belt. He's exited. He jokes that, like, you know, he hasn't exited a hydrogen startup yet. So it's one of the reasons why he's working with us. And then Dan is just my own personal mentor. Keeps me grounded as a founder. So how do you engage us? Well, if you're an investor, I have some bad news for you. Since we raised last year and we just got more DoD contracts and DOE contracts, we're not actually fundraising right now. But we may be fundraising at the end of the year and early next year. So you can get in touch with me then. But for the folks that are interested in products, we're definitely shipping. So get in touch with me if you're a fuel cell developer and you want to get amazing materials, or you're an electrolyzer developer, same thing, right? And with that, I've got 3.5 minutes left for questions from you. Thank you very much. Please don't be shy. Go ahead.
So you talked about a coating, but then you said roll to roll.
Yeah.
Would it be something that you'd coat onto the Nafion, or would
Yeah.
you supply an extra thin film?
So we have both versions. So we have actually worked with some folks to integrate our coating material onto their state-of-the-art materials. And we've actually generated, it's not that hard to make a PFAS material, base material, so we have roll-to-roll versions of that as well. So it really depends on what you want as far as your supply chain. Do you have the risk tolerance to test a new bilayer membrane? Or you're like, no, upper management wants me to keep my existing membrane but improve its durability. That's fine too for us. We can do both, right? The main thing of the roll-to-roll is the lessons learned, because by the end of the year, if you come to me and you say, look, Gary, everything's amazing, but everything's done roll-to-roll, prove to me you can get this to me at scale, I'll be like, well, we've made it roll-to-roll on our PFAS material. I see no reason why it wouldn't work with your PFAS material, because let's be honest, the PFAS patent is expired, so your PFAS material is not that different from mine, but that's under the radar there.
Do you use diagnostic equipment to ensure that your films are not pinhole?
Yeah. So we work with Eastman Kodak up in Rochester, New York. So if you know them, they're great guys to work with, and really know what they're doing. So there's all kinds of pinhole detection and making sure the coating is conformal, making sure all the thicknesses are aligned, and so forth. So that's a whole thing I'd rather not go into in this presentation. But yes, Peter.
I missed it, but what is the coating material?
Great question. I can't tell you. I can tell you a little bit. So it doesn't have fluorine in it. It's not PFAS. It's actually a hydrocarbon metal oxide composite, right? And then the further question, I'll just expand on that, is some people have asked me, why, if the material is so good, why not just launch it as a standalone membrane, right? We might in 5 years. And because at the end of the day, we're all a bunch of trained chemists and engineers. So we have reasons to believe that this hydrocarbon composite should survive oxygen and be perfectly fine with it. But we want real-time test data of 5 years continuous testing before we're willing to give it to a customer, even if you tell me you're willing to take the risk. Because I was like, electrolysis is no joke. Someone earlier told you, right? You develop a pinhole, the whole thing will explode. And there's an ethos of as a materials provider that we're like, no, we're not going to do that. So when I coat it with a bilayer system where the hydrocarbon is protected by the PFAS, I know for sure the PFAS is stable with oxygen next to it. So that's why the bilayer lets us commercialize a lot quicker. And then eventually we have a product pipeline to be like, well, we have a hydrocarbon material. We'll ship that in 5 or 6 years and we'll scale it. But by that time, from a corporate strategy standpoint, I already know that I can scale all the ionomer development and everything for the hydrocarbon. I already know I can roll-to-roll develop, code it onto a PFAS. It's not that hard to roll onto a different substrate and make it as a freestanding material from a corporate standpoint, right? But now I can ship the bilayer as my first gen product and then ship a hydrocarbon material later as my second gen product. Hopefully that clarifies it. Thank you all.